So to start my meatloaf mixture, I am using 2.5 pounds of ground beef. Now this one will vary because I'm using more ground beef in this recipe as opposed to my last meatloaf recipe. And I am going to be adding a sauce on the top of it, which is also different. So to my ground beef, I'm going to add some seasonings and spices. Here I have 2 teaspoons of Lawry's all seasoning salts. I also have 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, underneath there somewhere 1 teaspoon of onion powder, and 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika. I kind of want to jazz up the ketchup on top, so I'm gonna kind of give it a smokier flavor profile. But you can season your meatloaf with whatever you like. A little bit of cracked black pepper. I'm also going to add about 2 teaspoons of Lea & Perrins. You guys know what it is. Anyways, I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of that. And I have 2 large eggs here and add it to my bowl. Here I have, this is a puree or just a bunch of chopped fresh vegetables that I wanted to add today. I have 1 large bell pepper that I chopped, 1 large onion, 1 medium carrot, 3 to 4 cloves of garlic, and 1 celery stick. And I just ran it through my food processor, and I'm going to add it to my meatloaf today. You don't have to do that, but I like to sneak vegetables in where I can for my kids. So that's what I'm doing today for that. But you can add just onion, bell pepper, whatever you like. I'm also going to add 1 cup of breadcrumbs. These are just plain breadcrumbs. You could also crush some saltine crackers, toasted bread. It's up to you. And I'm going to add a little bit of dried parsley. If you have fresh parsley, that goes great. Now with clean hands, I'm going to start mixing this together. I don't really want to overwork it. I just want to combine everything well. Okay, so here is my meat mixture, and I'm going to put this into, you could use a baking pan, a baking dish. I'm going to find my casserole dish that I like to shape it in there and get this ready for the oven. My meatloaf mixture in a baking dish, and this is around a 4-quart baking dish, maybe a 3-quart also works. This is a little oversized, but I just wanted to use this today. I'm going to show you the sauce that I make for the top of the meatloaf. You could do homemade barbecue sauce, any homemade sauce, put it on your meatloaf. It's your meatloaf. You're going to top it with what you like. But here's something I do that's kind of quick and easy. I have 1 cup of ketchup, and I like to add the Heinz 57 sauce. This is actually Heinz 57 steak sauce. I think that's the same one, but I like to mix my ketchup with Heinz 57. And I just maybe a 1/4 cup to a 1/3 cup. I typically eyeball it, but for the most part it's a cup of ketchup and at least a 1/4 cup of Heinz 57. I'm also going to add a little bit of that smoked paprika, maybe a 1/4 teaspoon. Let's do a 1/4 teaspoon of some garlic powder, 1/4 teaspoon of onion powder, and I'm just going to give it a mix, and that is it. And that is going to be the sauce that I put on top of the meatloaf. I'm going to be baking this in a preheated oven of 350 degrees for about 2.5 pounds of meat. It's going to be somewhere between 55 minutes to an hour. It also depends how cold your meat is. This meat is not quite room temperature, but I did take the chill off, so there's always variations to cook time, but I'm going to cook it in a 350 degree Fahrenheit oven. So while the meatloaf is cooking, I am going to just cook some frozen veggies to go along with the meatloaf, and I have some steamed rice cooking in my rice cooker, and I'm going to make an onion brown gravy. It's really simple, and I think it just goes great with meatloaf. That's what my family asked for today, so that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so for my brown gravy, or brown onion gravy, I don't know what you want to call it. It's just something I do. I'm going to add like 2 tablespoons of oil, about 3 tablespoons of chopped onion. I'm going to add a pinch of salt. And as soon as your onions are sauteed and are translucent, which mine are at that point, I believe, you'll want to add 2.5 tablespoons of all-purpose flour right into your... Okay, so now I'm going to add 2 cups of beef broth. And I'm going to mix that in and just kind of work it in. I'm going to crank the heat up a little bit. Again, I didn't want it to burn earlier. And you're just going to mix this until the roux is combined with the liquid, little by little, just to make sure that you don't have lumps. So a little bit more here. And for my beef broth, I actually use 2 cups of water and 2 teaspoons of beef bouillon powder. So this does have salt in it. You know, you'll want to taste things for salt and seasoning once you make this. So I've added all of my beef broth to the pot. I'm going to just turn it up to bring it to a simmer. It'll start to thicken more once it starts to simmer. But in the meantime, I'm going to add just a little shake of onion powder, a little bit of garlic powder, some cracked black pepper. This onion gravy tastes great, but you know how you want to see it kind of browned? So what I like to do is add a little bit of dark soy sauce. You could use browning, the bouquet browning sauce, but I'm just going to add just a little smidge right into my pot and give it a mix. And that's just to give it more of a brown color. And that's it. Once this thickens, my gravy will be done. Okay, so my meatloaf is done. And as you can see, it rendered a lot of fat. This was 85-15 meat to fat ratio, but you know, there's a lot of juices in there too. Don't get me wrong. So once you pull it out of the oven, by the way, I did not cover this. When I baked it, I left it open. I failed to mention that. It baked uncovered. So I'm just going to let this set for about 15 minutes. And I am going to start scooping out some fat on the surface, but you really want to just let it hang out even if there's fat, because you might end up taking out some of the juices with the fat. So I'm going to let it set for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then I'll scoop out some of the fat, and I'll show you what a plate looks like. I'll cut into it. So here's what we're looking at. It looks really tender and moist. So here is my meatloaf plate. I have my veggies, I have my rice back there, and here's the meatloaf. It's so tender and juicy. My husband's excited for his plate. So I'm gonna pour some gravy on the rice. Just like that. And this is meatloaf dinner today. I hope you give this recipe a try. I hope you like it, and thanks for watching.